I'm proud to join with my colleagues in speaking out on climate change. Senators have been speaking on this issue since yesterday, all through the night, to add their voices to the millions of voices around the country who are committed to fighting climate change. The level of commitment we've seen from these senators is extraordinary. And we will need extraordinary commitment here in Congress, around the country, and around the world to address this issue. We will need that commitment because we are on the cusp of a climate crisis, a point of no return that will threaten our health, our economy, and our world. We are also on the cusp of innovations in clean energy and energy efficiency that have the possibility of transforming energy production and consumption. In other words, we're at a moment of great danger and great opportunity. A moment where we must make choices about whether we will go boldly into the future, investing in innovation, establishing serious and smart regulations, and committing to address the climate crisis, or whether we will continue to subsidize fossil fuels of the past and ignore the risks to our future. It is up to us. Doing something new is hard because when it comes to environmental and energy issues in this country, powerful, entrenched, deep-pocketed corporations are lined up to fight any change from the status quo. These powerful corporations defend policies that poison our air and foul our water, with little regard for the well-being of future generations. These powerful interests work hard to tilt the playing field so that energy entrepreneurs and innovators have a hard time getting a foothold in the market. And these powerful interests too often have a stranglehold on our political system, blocking not only bold change, but even conservative market-based reforms. When it comes to environmental and energy policy, the system is rigged. It's rigged against our families, and it's rigged against our future. Here's the point to underline. We can invest in research and develop new markets without spending any new money if we just shift our priorities from old fossil fuel energy to new clean energy. A tax policy that protects these powerful interests of the past is a tax policy that is rigged against the entrepreneurs, small businesses, and innovators of the future. It is rigged against families that want their children to live in a world where they can drink the water and breathe the air. I asked Americans to write in and talk about how their lives will be affected if we do not get serious about climate change. My question was a simple one. If we don't do anything at all to stop climate change, what do you think the world will look like 25 years from now? Blake Cady of Brookline, Massachusetts writes, I served on a U.S. Navy icebreaker in the Arctic in 1959 to 61 and saw that relatively pristine region with intact permafrost and a heavy sea ice well into the summer off Baffin Island and further north. Now, much of the Arctic Ocean ice cover is disappearing and is predicted to be entirely gone by the end of the 2030 summer season. There is still a narrow time window to address this looming crisis disaster, but action must be forceful and rapid to escape its worst aspects. I fear for my children and grandchildren's future. A letter from Mon Cochran of Orleans, Massachusetts writes, Dear Elizabeth, I'm 72 years old and living on Cape Cod, where I grew up. When I was a kid back in the 1940s, my parents and other very old people used to tell scary stories about the hurricane of 1938 and how it knocked down all the trees and blew the roofs off houses. We saw pictures of boats smashed on the shore or carried up into the streets by the flood tides. As I grew up in Orleans, we experienced a series of hurricanes, starting with Carol in 1954 and then Diana the next year. Each time our parents remembered 1938, and each time I remember being very, very scared as the storms barreled across the bay like furious freight trains while we cowered in the basement. My grandchildren, Tom and Kay, and I have been learning about global warming together, and we are noticing in particular how our bay and the ocean it connects to seems to be warmer every year. Kay and Tom were very scared by the pictures of Superstorm Sandy they saw on TV, and are worried that a storm like that, or worse, might hit us here in South Orleans. As for me, I think it is just a matter of time, but I don't tell them that. They live in Boston and have visions of a great wall of water roaring into Boston Harbor, knocking down all the buildings along the waterfront and surging up into the neighborhood where they live in Roslindale. From what I've been learning, we have already pumped so much extra carbon into the air that these much more extreme storms are likely to occur no matter what we do. But if we redouble our efforts to shift to clean energy, solar, wind, hydro, tidal, geothermal, biofuels, the way they are doing now in Europe and even in countries like China and India, then 25 years from now, Tom and Kay will know that a sustainable lifestyle is possible, and their children can look forward to a much safer and more secure second half of the 20th century. I have many, many more letters. As I said, I received more than 5,000 letters from people in Massachusetts and across the country. We are on the cusp of a climate crisis, a point of no return. We can continue to subsidize polluters and ignore the warnings all around us. Or we can invest in the future, invest in a future that can create jobs, a future that can strengthen our national security, and most of all, a future that can save our planet. This is our moment in history. We can act, we must act, we will act. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield.